Hi, everybody, and welcome to the June 2020 edition of the Third Fridays podcast. I'm very excited today because we have a very experienced and distinguished panel. But for anybody who has missed the last few episodes, uh, not surprisingly, we've talked about the COVID-19 pandemic. I think we initially talked about how the New York Workers' Compensation Board reacted, how they were going to litigate some issues and hold in abeyance certain other ones. We've then talked about certain case law that has come up that would help our defenses. And what a nice way to delve into today's podcast with this panel, because it has a lot of the same topics and themes with a little bit more sprinkled in, specific to our guests' experiences. So first off, my first guest is David Barry. He is the National Director of Casualty Risk Control for Willis Towers Watson. He has been assisting clients with evaluating their risks and implementing control strategies for over 25 years. David is based out of Overland Park, Kansas, but has assisted clients all over the world with safety and health matters. He has been very active lately with assisting clients create and implement programs, to create and implement programs related to restarting their business and employee safety post-COVID-19. My second guest is also from Willis Towers Watson. Brian Palmer is a Northeast Construction Claims Area Practice Leader with over 10 plus years of property and casualty claims experience. Brian's responsibilities include developing new claim services for clients and ensuring claims resources are properly utilized and maximized. Brian is a frequent speaker at claims and litigation management conferences and has participated in efforts to reform New York's scaffold law. And my third guest is someone that some of our guests have heard in prior episodes. Tashia Rasul is a partner at Lois Law Firm. Very proud to call her one of my partners and a leader here at the firm. She specifically heads our construction practice group, and she came out with a new book earlier this year called Defending Construction Claims. Like Brian, she also lectures at claims and litigation management conferences around the country, which makes me the least distinguished guest of the group. I guess that makes sense for the podcast host. But as everybody knows, my name is Christian Cison. I'm also a partner at Lois Law Firm. And I think the way we want to get this started is kick it off with Dave here, because you have something new to tell us with Willis Towers Watson.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Christian. Yeah, as Christian mentioned, we've been very active lately in assisting clients with their response to COVID-19, especially restarting their business operations. And, we call it restarting because it's not really like they're returning to work, because most companies never really left work completely. All they did was just kind of shift to a work from home strategy, or maybe they reduced their operations. But just about every company had at least some component of their operations continuing. So what they're really doing now is saying, how are we going to cope with operating a business in a post-COVID-19 world? And they're really looking for, assistance, because many companies have never had to deal with this before. I mean, the last serious pandemic we had here in the U.S. was 1918. And as you can imagine, the business world is a lot different now than what it was back then. And so we really didn't have a lot of experience to draw when it came to restarting and making our business different in a post-COVID-19 world. So what employers have done is they've asked us to help them create strategies to help get them back to work. And in response to that, we've really developed our playbook methodology, where using this written document and our consultants, we can assist a client with getting back to work and creating a solid formal strategy and plan to not only address business operations, but also employee health and safety. And not only for the people in the physical facility, but the people that will continue to work from home for the time being.
It's very interesting, Dave, because a lot of businesses have spent so much investment of time and money and effort into creating the remote environment. And now that states are starting to open up, it's really a good focus to start figuring out how do we best reopen, right?
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, a lot of people, I think one of the big pleasant surprises of COVID-19 is how well work from home worked. I think when it first started and people were literally forced out of their offices, they were worried about whether our technology or whether our policies, procedures, or even our staff were equipped to do this. And what we've come to find out is work from home has actually worked pretty well. So with many organizations, in my opinion, have what I've seen people do is they've said, even though the government says maybe it's okay to get back to work from home's working. So we're in no real rush right now. But with that being said, and people working at home, I think we're going to start to see a shift in workers' compensation claims, especially those related to that new work from home exposure. Previous to COVID-19, a very small amount, one of the numbers I saw was somewhere around 10 to 11% of the people worked out of their home exclusively. And some of the numbers, projections I'm seeing are saying, post COVID-19, especially for the first 6 months to year, they're thinking 40 to 60% of people will continue to work from home. So with that being said, I think we're going to start seeing claims with interesting causes like, tripped over my golden retriever, or fell down the stairs as I was rushing to answer the phone, or, tripped over my computer cords as I was getting up to, get another cup of coffee. In the old days, there was probably a lot of questions about compensability, but, in a new post-COVID-19 world where people are working out of their homes much, much more, this could be an issue and really a new horizon that we need to look at on a claims front.
I think that's a good point, because the new horizon, it seems like it's newer every day, right? Before it would be, how many cases and how many deaths were associated, and how many could we get the proper testing? Could we get enough capacity in our hospitals? And every update that we get from our governors and our federal officials, it almost seems like this playbook has to keep changing and evolving in a way that meets the needs of any particular client, as opposed to just a general playbook.
Yeah, the playbook is definitely a living document. And really, we're creating the playbook now to respond to COVID-19. But I think the most, impact it will have is if we ever have another pandemic. I hope we never do, but chances are something else may pop up in the future. And having a playbook document in place, and having, a strategy and a methodology in place to address a pandemic, I think is going to be critical in helping to lessen the financial impact and the people impact that a pandemic may have. Our really playbook process contains, six key areas that we've really kind of focused in on. The first one just being the operating protocols and the supply chain. And these are just the things that we'll have to change in a post-COVID-19 world. When you think of things like social distancing, when you think of the ways that we maybe have to change our sourcing of materials that we receive, especially some of the foreign materials, these are big considerations that the companies have to put in place. The second area that we really think would be critical in our playbook process is just creating a pandemic response team. And really what that is just getting a multidisciplinary group from your organization to all come together and, create a plan to address how, as an organization, are we going to respond to COVID-19 within our respected areas and as the organization as a whole. There's definitely a lot of considerations that need to be put around the third area of PPE, that initial disinfecting and cleaning going forward, and then also kind of the elephant in the room, social distancing. That's a phrase that nobody had really even heard of 3 months ago, and it seems like now it's every other sentence I say has the word social distancing in it. So especially in a lot of traditional business operations where social distancing was never even remotely considered as part of operations, it's going to be a major shift for these organizations, and something that they need to, consider and have a plan in place as part of a playbook process. There also is a lot of concerns that people have just about emotional well-being of the employees, and making sure that we continue to communicate with them and let them know about the changes that we've made for their health and safety. So as part of that, in our playbook process, we really have a lot of communication tools in there, with outreach letters, with specialized trainings, with just different ways that we can help to relieve maybe any anxiety employees may have about coming back to work, but then also to make sure that our supervisors and management team have the tools they need to help implement the process as they restart their business operations. Another key element is really that facility signage. I think the reinforcement of basic hygiene are one of the key elements of that, and just making sure that we have lots of signs available about washing your hands and how to properly social distance, and the importance of all these different areas that we've outlined. And we need to make sure that we constantly remind people of these. And one of the best ways to do that is signage. And then really the last area of our playbook process that we think everybody should really consider is just the physical restarting of the facility. I mean, we've got some facilities or some operations that maybe have been 24/7, 365. And then all of a sudden, let's say it's a facility that we've shut down for 2 or 3 months. And during that time, some equipment that has never been shut down is finally shut down. We have to worry about that restarting. Maybe a lot of preventive maintenance or even fire suppression system inspections, things like that could have all been missed or skipped. So in order to provide as little downtime as possible and potentially reduce those, insurance losses when it comes to fires or other catastrophic events, we need to make sure that we have a plan in place to address the facility also.
Well, Dave, you had me at playbook. I'm a huge sports fan, so I think when we started talking about this, I was immediately involved in wanting to read this. But with those 6 different factors or guidelines, what would you say is maybe the most difficult or the most challenging one for a business to really tackle? Is there one that really stands out that you would say is, this is the number one thing that we need to have first?
Yeah, it's definitely the communication. That's what a lot of people struggle with, because it's a little more abstract or touchy-feely, as we'll say. It's not just making sure that things are physically apart. It's actually reaching out to the employee and going, hey, we do have a concern about your health and safety. These are the steps that we've taken. This is how you can communicate with us about any trepidation you may have about coming back to work. This is how we're going to address our operations. If somebody does, come down with the virus, this is what we're going to do to protect you and the rest of your teammates. So again, this is an aspect where it's really that emotional well-being and definitely a human resources type of outreach that a physical operations person or maybe even a safety and health person aren't typically used to, but it's a critical component of the entire process.
And you mentioned this pandemic response team. Would you say that maybe it seems like a softball here, but the fact that this pandemic response team would be solely tasked with duties related to COVID-19 or prevention of other pandemic, this type of like outreach and communication, would that group be your ideal task force?
Yeah, definitely. They're your organizers, the people that are going to be the key stakeholders from each of the individual departments. And those are the folks that we need to make sure that we have on the team so they can marshal the resources within their individual departments. So, this is really going to be a cross-functional team that we need to make sure we have just about every aspect of the organization recognized. I mean, whether it be, the custodial group, it has just as an important role of this as somebody who's working in the financial group, because nobody's role is more important than any others, but working together as a team is when we're going to create this, formalized plan, and it's going to provide the highest level of success for restarting our business operations.
I would have to agree with you there, because I think, Tashia and I, being partners at Lois, we felt like we were stepping into a role that we hadn't really thought about doing, right? That most people in leadership positions at any particular business where we are playing that kind of response team captain role within our units. I know Tashia and I, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're making these communication outreaches to our teammates just to make sure they're doing okay, like they have everything they need, whether it's from a technological perspective, like having the right equipment, or if they need particular help doing a task that maybe would be so easy in the office but might not be as easy remotely in their own homes, right?
Oh yeah, yes, Christian, you're right. I feel like it's a new level of management for us that we've had to take on over the past couple of months, right? It's very different working remotely. I mean, we do have the video chats where we're seeing each other a couple times a week when we're checking in with each other, but it's so much different. We're constantly checking in to ensure that, like you said, everyone has the physical capabilities, all of the technology to work, but also with all of the information that's coming in from the media, the news, the social media, just to ensure their employees are their emotional well-being are still intact, and just in case if they need a little bit of time off or relief from work just to decompress and restart. It's something we've had to do constantly every day for the past few months or so, and yeah, I think it management and leadership with the COVID-19 pandemic has really taken on a new meaning to say.
Yeah, it's odd because the added stress of it all, it almost would seem like, well, if you're going to add more things for me to do, it's going to be harder. But I've actually kind of liked how it's forced us to make sure that we say hi to each other, right? We're not, walking into an office and then talking about the next trial or the next, big conference call meeting that we have with someone of Brian Palmer's stature, right? It's just like, hey, like, how are you doing? Is something that we sometimes lose in a fast-paced work environment. But it's been nice. I don't know if anything's been different on your end, Brian. Like, how has your team changed in a way that maybe has affected the output of your business strategies?
Thank you, Christian. I think it's a challenge to the entire claims consulting and claims management industry, right? Dave kicked this off by saying that the last time our country had to deal with a pandemic of this severity and scope was 100 years ago. Well, 100 years ago, there were no broker claims consultants, there were no TPAs, and many of the workers' compensation departments across the country were either not in existence or in its infancy. So it's been a real challenge because we're kind of building this as we go. So from a teamwork standpoint, we've been engaging in biweekly calls. We've been trying to leverage our technology, whether that be Skype or Microsoft Teams. We've been trying to assist our clients with the grind of, instead of in-person meetings, having Microsoft Teams video conferences to have that ongoing human connection, because that's important, right? When you start talking about insurance and claims, and especially workers' compensation, you're talking about people at the end of the day. And I think it's important and something that Mark Cuban posted on LinkedIn, I think about a month ago or so, that a lot of corporations are going to be judged based on the way that they handle COVID-19, whether that be externally with their customers or internally with their employees and colleagues. So it's something that's truly important and something that Willis Towers Watson is taking great pride in from an internal standpoint with our colleagues and team members, and then also externally with our clients and customers.
Yeah, I would say that really translates, you're right, to the entire workers' compensation industry, right? Sometimes we fight these uphill battles where there are different actors that need to all be on the same page, right? How do we do this particular litigation aspect of a trial or a hearing, right? We all need to be on the same page as to how that process moves forward. And it's not as easy in today's world to get everybody's schedules aligned and make sure that everybody knows what, how the other half lives. But you're right. I think, we've definitely experienced on our end a lot of good results just by showing our faces to each other, right? I think we all like have a good laugh at, some of the backgrounds we choose on video calls, or the way we're positioning the camera against a particular room, or maybe even on a nice pet or a child that we haven't met before. It's nice to kind of like get to know our teammates on a more personal level, while also making sure that really the train doesn't stop, right? We're still moving, especially in workers' compensation. It's been, at least in New York, one of those industries that hasn't missed a beat with virtual hearings and the way that administrative processing has evolved. So to throw it back to you, Dave, we're talking a lot about risk mitigation and how businesses can save money on the front end. Can you give maybe an example that would apply to maybe a lot of businesses, or maybe businesses that are most affected by this? Something that would kind of give a little peek behind the door to see what this playbook is all about?
I mean, one of the big areas that we get questions about from our clients right now is on testing and screening. And it's just a continually evolving topic where, new tests are developed on a constant basis, and they're getting more accurate, they're getting more available. But right now, unfortunately, testing for many organizations is just not possible. So what really a lot of them have done is kind of implemented a screening strategy. And with that being said, it's important that we, have the right equipment in place, the right people, that we plan ahead. Because, you can imagine if you had, let's just say, a manufacturing facility with 500 people that report on the first shift, and you had to, temperature screen all of them. You have them all report at the same time. Let's say it takes, a minute to temperature screen each person. That's an extra 500 minutes just to get everybody in the front door. So just, thinking about the process and making sure that you have a strategy in place. I mean, that's key to saving money, saving time, and then just making everybody's life a whole lot easier, and then a whole lot more back to, the quote unquote normal that we had, previous to COVID-19.
And, we implement the playbook, we do everything we're supposed to do, but it doesn't mean that claims are going to stop occurring. So I think when you introduced, the topic, you did mention there were going to be these different types of claims. I hope nobody falls over their golden retriever, or certain cords get tangled and result in an accident. But it's going to happen. We know that it will, and fortunately, at its bare bones assessment, it's still a workers' compensation claim in a jurisdiction that we have a lot of experience defending employers in. So, is there anything about a COVID-19 claim, or maybe a work from home claim, Brian, that would, or maybe even Tashia too, that would
Mm-hmm.
change our process? Because our process has been, let's at least treat it as a claim, as we would under normal circumstances, but let's just use these opportunities to find different facts. Like, have you experienced anything different as far as claims arising in the last 3 months?
Yeah, so Christian, I'm going to do something which some people take issue with. I'm going to answer a question with a question. So let me say this. I actually think, while we haven't encountered any or many claims of this nature yet, I think going forward, whether you're in New York or New Jersey or Missouri, when you're sitting at a desk, maybe your kitchen desk or on your sofa, that's a much different ergonomic setup than what you would experience when you're in the office, right? Where you may have a specified seat that could be raised or lowered, a desk that could be even raised or lowered, and additional monitors and screens. So, Dave, I'm going to actually kick it off to you to answer this question. In terms of ergonomic challenges, what do you see there? And then does the Willis Towers Watson playbook address some of the ergonomic challenges businesses may face as more Americans work from home?
Yeah, I mean, you're right, Brian. People were forced out of their nice, cushy offices that had great ergonomic furniture into their homes, where they're fighting for space with a spouse or maybe children that have returned, to make the home their school also. So less than ideal conditions. And just because your couch may look comfy doesn't necessarily mean it's the best place for you to camp out and do work. So, with that, I think we're going to see a cumulative effect, and we're going to start to see claims pretty soon from just poor ergonomics from people working at home. So as part of that process and consideration, we have developed some ergonomic aids, including some work from home videos, and then actually some self-evaluation that can be done that offer assistance. And then we also have the ability to use some of our ergonomic specialists to do one-on-one video coaching with folks. So, I mean, regardless of what you have, it's important that we make the best of it. And typically what we're seeing is that even with basic equipment, as long as it's set up properly, we can often help to relieve a lot of the aches and pains that come from less than ideal ergonomics or less than ideal conditions of working from home. And hopefully these changes that we're making through our ergonomics offerings can help to reduce the number of claims we may have related to this in the future.
That's a great point. I mean, like, you know, Tashia and I do this on a daily basis, and I know that our followers definitely are aware of my slogan, which is defend from day one. But how great would it be, Tashia, to know that employers could implement different safety measures or provide the actual aids and equipment for the employee to use? Because then it's not so much of an investigation as to, well, did you use your grandfather's chair from 1970 in the kitchen, or did you use the nice, comfortable chair that we provided you, where we know all the specs, we know the manufacturing details, and we know the right way that we've trained you how to use it? How beneficial would that be from a defense attorney's perspective to know that the investigation is kind of a little bit easier?
You know, Christian, I think that would be very beneficial. As you said, the investigation in the workers' compensation claim and in our defense is key, right? Your slogan is defend from day one, which means start the investigation from the moment you're aware that there is a loss or a claimed loss, right? And you know, it's interesting that we're talking about ergonomics and actual office equipment, because we've started feeling these questions from clients. Clients are asking, we haven't seen any claims yet, but clients have been asking because their employees are starting to complain that they're not very comfortable in their work environment. If they need medical attention, what would happen? How is the employer going to facilitate more comfort with them, you know, actually carrying out their daily job duties? So we've started answering these questions for clients, you know, at least a couple of times a week. And I think it's because everyone's anticipating these claims, you know, the back injuries, maybe carpal tunnel because they don't have the fancy like padding on their desk for the keyboard and so forth. So, you know, I think it's an absolutely fabulous idea if the employers can implement, you know, um, a protocol and also provide supplies for the employees to work from home to ensure that they're working in a safe and healthy environment, you know, notwithstanding the golden retriever that's like running around so forth, but kind of replicating the office that they were sitting in when they were going into the office every day. So I think that would definitely help with the investigation. It'll help in terms of we or the employer knows what they're producing to the employees. So when there's a claim that something's gone wrong or they're not feeling well or they're sustained an injury, at least we have a sense of a picture of what could potentially happen. Because as you know, one of the issues we're going to face with defending these claims is unwitnessed accidents, right? No one's going to be there. A coworker is not going to be there with the worker to tell us what exactly happened. So the more information we have about their physical work environment, it would definitely help us to investigate and defend these claims.
And Tashia, one of the issues that we saw initially with people working out of the house was that many employers just gave them a stipend and said, here's 200, 500, whatever the number is, and just go to your local office supply store and buy whatever you need for ergonomics. And
well, David,
when you don't give
you there, I don't want our employees to hear this now.
Unfortunately, though, when you don't give them any guidance, a lot of them went out and just bought a lot of things that really didn't benefit them ergonomically. So really all the company did was waste money. So you definitely have to put some different constraints on what they should buy and you know how they should buy it, and then also how they should use it. You can't just kind of give somebody something and expect them to know how to set it up properly. There's a whole education process, and you definitely need a safety professional to help you through this process.
Makes sense. And one of the things that I always focus on in defending my claims is documenting everything, right? So you'll document what you're telling them to buy or what you're providing them with and how to use it and what to do if something malfunctions, right? So that's something I would stress heavily on, documenting every single thing, more so now than ever being done before.
It's almost like
Yeah, and I think
a mini Medicare set aside that these employees are getting. We need to make sure that they're using the right equipment compared to the claimant who receives an allocation for future medical expenses. We hope that they don't use it to buy a car or a boat, that they're really using it to fund their medical care that they allegedly need. But, I think you're right, Dave, that to really specify what employees can use, not only from a defense perspective, but from a safety issue, right? Like we want to make sure that if we thoroughly believe that our teammates are going to best work better or best help us, right, and work better in an environment remotely where they're not in a group environment, that we're giving them all the tools, and it's not just like the emotional check-ins that we're talking about with video calls, and just like making sure that like we get to know each other better on a more human level, but also the actual equipment that they get, right? Not just a blanket stipend to say, here, go take it and go to a nice dinner. It's actually for your home office so that you can mimic your at work lifestyle.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting because obviously everyone knows about the perils of COVID-19 and the challenges, but just throughout the history of America, right, whenever we've been going through tough times, we've come out of it better, right? Whether that's through technology or culture, just working together as a country. And that's kind of what we're seeing here, right? And I think it's a real credit to David and to his team and Willis Towers Watson that we're going down this road of innovation, right? Creating this back on track product for our clients and for the country. But I think that we can't also ignore just the changes inherently about claims management, right? Again, the challenges of COVID-19. So what do you do when you have a state that's been shut down and elective surgeries can't take place, right? As you know, Tashia, right, the workers' comp boards of various jurisdictions, those claims are going to keep going, right? The claims and the benefits are going to keep being dispensed by the carriers and TPAs.
Yes.
One of the big challenges that we've seen, and it's been a concern to our clients at Willis Towers Watson and to us as an organization, is just the reality of the changes in some workers' compensation statutes, right? So again, with these challenges, there are states like California, Illinois, I believe New Jersey, and even New York legislatures have introduced bills modifying workers' compensation compensability, right? And the presumption with some states with these modifications that if you make a claim that you have contracted COVID-19 through your workplace, there's a fast track for that to be compensable. I mean, at the end of the day, the workers' comp system was made to help introduce protections for workers, and obviously that's something that is going to be a challenge. So Tashia, is there some best practices in terms of helping to mitigate COVID-19 workers' comp claims that you can maybe talk to us about?
Oh yes, absolutely. So we've been seeing a lot of claims so far. We've seen what I consider frivolous claims, like clearly frivolous claims. We've had a couple where the date of loss is after a project has closed, a construction project, which, clearly, hello, you weren't working. So if you contracted COVID-19, it wasn't from working on our project. We've seen claims that are filed where they think they got COVID-19 but never had a positive test, or they contracted COVID-19 but they couldn't connect it to work, but just wanted to let the employer know. We've also had a couple of cases, current open cases. For example, one of them was a claimant who's in a rehab facility and contracted COVID-19. Now, does that become compensable? We've had another claim where The claimant died of COVID-19. It's a regular orthopedic workers' compensation claim. Um, we don't believe it was contracted by, through seeking any medical attention related to his underlying claim. So we're just waiting to see if it's going to be a death claim. So we've seen a good variety of claims come in so far, and I absolutely think we're going to see those claims that we've been talking about during this podcast, where it's not going to be related to an actual, excuse me, COVID-19 infection, but it's going to be something else, a trip and fall, or, sitting in a chair that just doesn't work and developing back and neck pain. I wouldn't call them consequential injuries, but they would be related to the fact that because of COVID-19, we're working remotely, right? So, our firm has come up with um, a set of guidelines, best practices for defending these claims. I mean, we've always had a very detailed process. Claims come in. I'll go back to what Christian's slogan is: defend from day one, get all of the investigation. One of the things that we tell our clients to do, knowing that these claims are going to come in, is to just be aware. Be aware of your employees and what they're doing on a daily basis, and who's saying what and who's reporting what, because this helps to build up the defense, right? Because we might have a situation where one employee is telling another, oh, I think I'm going to file a workers' compensation claim only because, this back pain I've had for like 6 years now, it's starting to become an issue with me just like sitting at home all day, not being able to like get up and walk like I would normally do in the office. So even though we're going to face a lot of these unwitnessed accident claims, I think, the employer being cognizant of what's being mentioned, still talking to employees, anything that they hear that they believe that can lead to a potential claim, document it. Our excuse me, our response to these COVID-19 claims and any claims related to COVID-19 remote working would be to deny them. In New York, workers' compensation, under the workers' compensation law, it has not been made to be a presumptive claim. The COVID-19 claims, it's not presumed to be work related or compensable. So we handle them just like any other denied claim. It comes in, we encourage the TPA and the carrier to file denial documents. We file the denial documents, and the investigation begins. We would like to speak with any and all parties who are involved. For the kind of practice that I do, the construction claims, the foreman, the super, anyone who was on the job site. And for these kinds of claims, we're talking about the ones that happened, prior to this new remote work environment that we anticipate going into, because as we know, construction can only be done like physically for the most part, right? But whoever the manager or supervisor is, we're saying, hey, talk to everyone that you could potentially talk to see if there's any murmurs or whisperings about, anyone trying to file a frivolous claim or anything like that. Bring it to our attention. We'll file the denial documents and we'll just take it before the board. I think there is a burden of proof that the claimant has to meet, whether it's an actual infection or a claim that's a result of just working from home. Under workers' compensation law, section 21, there's a presumption that an accident occurred and that it was work related, but we do have the issue of causal relation, right? That the job actually really caused the employer to be infected or injured. So it might be an uphill battle to fight that section 21 presumption, but I think if we have all the information we need, we can successfully defend the claim. Our firm has come up with a list of questions that we've been providing to our clients, whether it's the actual employer, the TP, or the carrier, or any brokerage firms, for employers to be asking the employees from the moment the claim is filed. It's about 30 questions or so. It goes into the who, what, where, when, We should get as detailed answers as we possibly can, and we use those the answers to cross-examine the claimants when it comes time for trial. Now, Christian, I am not aware of any that has been before the board yet, any of these denied claims. Have you?
No, Tashia, and I think that's like it kind of talks to the actual difficulty that a claim can be compensable in New York. Brian, you mentioned some states that have passed some legislation, and not for not trying. There are some certain groups that have tried to push similar legislation in New York. Fortunately, cooler heads have prevailed, and instead of responding to a pandemic by kind of pushing liability to a party that's not truly responsible, we are kind of dealing with our current playbook, as Tashia mentioned, for a denied claim. I think that the actual response of our society kind of mimics how difficult it can be in New York workers' compensation, right? Because if anybody contracts COVID-19, how able are they to pinpoint it to one specific source, right? We couldn't go outside for a very long time. We are told not to touch door handles or wear masks or not even visit our relatives and friends, especially if they have comorbidities or they're a little bit older. And with all those restrictions in place that, for a lot of us still are in place, it's hard to be able to pinpoint it to just one specific thing. And when we're going to talk about placing liability on a workers' compensation carrier, we already know that illnesses and infections that are caused by exposure to the general public, right? Think of your inhalation claims, your respiratory claims. If it's not definitively part of the work environment, then they are denied, right? The board has upheld those types of denials. And I think the response of the board in relation to how the legislation failed has actually mimicked the way our society has responded to the pandemic as a whole. It's very easy to kind of look at how we're doing on the outside and then look within our four walls to see, well, you know what, for once, this actually makes sense, right? Why should an insurance carrier or a TPA be responsible for an allegation of COVID-19 when that employee rode the subway every day to do activities of daily living, right? How do we know that COVID-19 wasn't contracted there? Mention unwitnessed accidents, Tashia. Certainly that's going to be very, very difficult, but maybe to kick it back to you, Dave, a lot of the playbook, with a response team and with ergonomic aids, maybe there are some tools in our chest to actually help defend these.
Yeah, I think it's going to go back to our basic, nuts and bolts accident investigations and safety programs. And then again, I think one of the key elements is just the communication. I think making sure that we continually to communicate to the employees that, we have a care for their health and safety. These are the things that we've done. These are the tools that we've developed. And then also just making sure that they know there's an open line of communication at all times. So if they do have questions, concerns, ideas about health and safety or things that they need to continue to work health and in a safe and health manner post COVID-19, that we're able to listen to them and we will respond to their questions.
Yeah, and I think it's an important point that if you and our clients and just the general industry can have an opportunity to review the back on track in the playbook, right? The whole goal is the before and after, right? So if before an incident there's good safety protocols and risk mitigation procedures, you'll hopefully avoid COVID-19 on the front end, right? And that's one of the reasons as an organization and specifically as a claims consulting group, we're really telling our clients, you know what, if you're engaging in these good practices, you probably won't have too many COVID-19 claims. We know that the severity is there and the concern is there for any employee who may contract it, but don't lose sight of your current book of business, right? And maybe try to use this unfortunate downturn, but the reality that, unfortunately less people are at work. It seems to be a trend across the workers' comp industry that claims frequencies are going down. but you still have all those claims from before COVID-19 and your normal slip and falls and your lifting injuries. Don't lose sight of that, and maybe use this time to have a renewed focus on trying to close those claims. You may have some issues where, I know from a consulting practice, unfortunately, but it's the reality of the situation where we're trying to use this time to try to settle more claims, right? There may be some folks who are unfortunately economically hurting, and they can use the extra cash flow that may come from a workers' compensation or a general liability settlement. Part of our Back on Track service is a claims closure project, right? So we as a broker can help any organization go in and review their open book of claims, especially for workers' compensation, and review what can be closed right now. Maybe there are some settlement opportunities that are based on the changing dynamics and the changing fact patterns due to COVID-19. So it's just something that I think the general industry should be aware of, and I'm sure and know that this is something that's a topic that's discussed on the carrier and TPA front as well.
Yep, Brian, I actually don't think that I could have scripted kind of like an overall conclusion as good as that, right? We're living in a world where we're changing constantly, but you're right. Let's also not forget about what we're all already doing in current claims, because anything that we learn, any way that we can get better in defending new claims that we may not have seen before, can still help the claims that we currently have in our book, in our docket. But I think that like I said, that's a beautiful way to tie all this up, right? There's like this before scenario where we try to mitigate risk and provide our businesses with as much tools as possible, and it's not letting us, or not resulting in us kind of taking our hands off the wheel, right? We're still ready to defend claims. We know how that usual process works. It can only really enhance our style and our process to make sure that claims closures, as you said, really goes to the forefront, right? We don't want to keep these claims open no matter what the claim is. So I think that was just a great way to tie it all together. I want to remind our listeners that our distinguished panel here today, it really helps this process, right? So a reminder that David Barry here is the National Director of Casualty Risk Control for Willis Towers Watson. Brian Palmer, our other guest, Northeast Construction Claims Area Practice Leader. Tashia and I are partners at Lois Law Firm. Thank you guys for appearing today and sharing your knowledge about the ongoing pandemic and the crisis. As always, our partnership is in lockstep with yours. And to all the listeners out there, this is Christian Cisan reminding you to defend from day one. A little hat tip to Tashia for mentioning the slogan more than once.